We live in an era where we are constantly told that sugar is the enemy. We see the headlines about type 2 diabetes, and we feel a sense of dread every time we hear about rising A1C levels. Welcome to Dr. Levitas. But here is the perspective shift that most doctors aren't giving you. Your blood sugar isn't rising because you're broken. It's rising because your sink is clogged. Or worse, it's shrinking. In the world of clinical metabolic health, we don't look at the body as just a series of blood tests. We look at it as a complex fluid dynamics system. Today, we are going to talk about your skeletal muscle, your metabolic sink. We're going to explore how your muscles are the primary defense against metabolic disease, why the weights you lift in your 30s are an insurance policy for your 60s, and how you can manually unlock your cells without ever needing a shot of insulin. Please take a second to like the video and leave a comment. Your engagement is a big help to the channel. If you want to understand metabolic health, you have to follow the path of the fuel. When you eat a meal, whether it's a bowl of fruit or a slice of sourdough, your body breaks those carbohydrates down into glucose. This glucose enters your bloodstream, and your body must find a place to put it, and fast. High blood sugar is corrosive. It's toxic to your nerves and your eyes. So, where does it go? While your liver takes a small portion and your brain takes a steady sip, a staggering 80% of postprandial glucose disposal, that's the sugar cleared after a meal, is handled exclusively by your skeletal muscle. A landmark review published in the Journal of Clinical Investigation confirmed that skeletal muscle is the primary site for whole-body glucose uptake. Your muscles aren't just for movement or aesthetics. They are your body's largest metabolic organ. Think of your bloodstream as a hallway and your muscle cells as massive, hungry rooms. If those rooms are small or the doors are locked, the hallway stays crowded with sugar. If you want a healthy metabolism, you don't just need less sugar, you need a bigger, hungrier sink. This is perhaps the most empowering piece of biochemistry you will ever learn. For decades, we've been told that insulin is the only key that unlocks the door to your cells. In type 2 diabetes, that key stops working. The lock becomes rusty, which we call insulin resistance. But your body has a backdoor entry system. How do GLUT4 receptors physically open the doors to muscle cells without needing insulin when you lift heavy? When a muscle contracts, whether you're doing a heavy deadlift, a push-up, or even just squeezing a grip trainer, it triggers a process called non-insulin-dependent glucose uptake. The mechanical tension and the surge of calcium inside the muscle fiber send a signal to GLUT4 proteins. These proteins act like tiny elevators that rise to the surface of the cell membrane and open up sugar ports. A 2023 clinical study in Nature Metabolism demonstrated that exercise-induced GLUT4 translocation can increase glucose uptake by up to 50 times compared to a resting state. This means that by simply moving your muscles against resistance, you are manually overriding insulin resistance. You are literally pulling the sugar out of your blood using the back door of your cells. Many people are shocked when they are diagnosed with pre-diabetes in their mid-40s, especially if their diet hasn't changed much. I eat the same way I did 10 years ago, they say. And that is exactly the problem. Why does losing muscle mass in your 30s directly cause insulin resistance in your 40s? This is the decade lag. Starting in our early 30s, if you aren't actively training for strength, you begin to lose about 3% to 8% of our muscle mass per decade. This is called sarcopenia. Remember the sink analogy? If your metabolic sink is shrinking by 5% every few years, but you are pouring the same amount of sugar, water, and your diet into it, the sink will eventually overflow. By the time you hit 45, you might have significantly less metabolic real estate than you did at 35. Your sink has become a teacup. The same bowl of pasta that your body could easily handle in your 30s now causes a massive, prolonged blood sugar spike because there simply isn't enough muscle tissue to soak it up. Insulin resistance in your 40s is often just the biological consequence of muscle poverty in your 30s. Sustainable health isn't just about weight. It's about maintaining the hardware of your metabolism. What if I told you that one of the most powerful meds for blood sugar management is completely free and takes only 10 minutes? How does a short walk after a heavy meal act biologically similar to metformin? Metformin, the world's most prescribed diabetes medication, works largely by activating an enzyme called AMPK. AMPK is often called the metabolic master switch. When AMPK is turned on, it tells your cells to stop making fat and start burning sugar and fat for fuel. Guess what else activates AMPK with incredible efficiency? Muscle contraction. When you take a 10-minute brisk walk after a meal, your muscles demand immediate energy. This demand flips the switch on AMPK, which then triggers the GLUT4 elevators we talked about earlier. A 2022 meta-analysis published in Sports Medicine found that even light walking after a meal significantly blunted the insulin spike and lowered glucose levels more effectively than standing or sitting. It is a biological short circuit for insulin resistance. You are using your muscles to mop up the sugar before it has a chance to damage your system. Your muscles have a storage limit. We call stored sugar glycogen. But what happens to excess blood glucose if your muscle tank is completely full and you don't move? Imagine a sponge that is already dripping wet. If you pour more water on it, the water just runs off. If your muscle glycogen stores are full because you haven't moved or exercised, the glucose has nowhere to go. The liver is then forced to deal with the excess. Through a process called de novo lipogenesis, the liver converts that sugar into fat, specifically VLDL cholesterol and triglycerides. This fat doesn't just sit on your hips, it becomes ectopic fat. It begins to wrap around your heart, clog your liver, the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, and even infiltrate your pancreas. A study from Newcastle University in 2024 showed that this fatty infiltration of the pancreas is the final step that breaks insulin production entirely. When your muscle tank is full and inactive, your body's overflow pipe sends the sugar to places it was never meant to be, turning a fuel problem into a structural disease. Why are individuals with high muscle mass, even if they aren't lean in the traditional sense, incredibly resistant to the onset of metabolic syndrome? It comes down to a concept called metabolic flexibility. Someone with high muscle mass has a much higher basal metabolic rate. Their engine is idling at a much higher temperature. More muscle means more mitochondria, the cellular power plants that burn fat and sugar. But it's also about myokines. We used to think muscles were just for pulling on bones. We now know that muscles are endocrine organs. When muscles contract, they release myokines like irisin and IL-6. These chemicals travel to your fat cells and tell them to brown, becoming more metabolically active, and they travel to your brain to reduce inflammation. Research published in Endocrine Reviews in 2023 highlighted that these myokines act as a shield, protecting the body from the systemic inflammation that drives metabolic syndrome. In the economy of health, muscle is the only currency that pays dividends while you sleep. Finally, let's look at the hidden benefit of muscle. How does muscle act as a sponge to protect your heart and brain from the damaging effects of glycation? As we've discussed in previous videos, when sugar stays in your blood too long, it sticks to proteins in a process called glycation, creating advanced glycation end products, or AGs. This is the caramelization that damages your delicate neural wiring and stiffens your arteries. Your skeletal muscle is your buffer system. By rapidly soaking up excess glucose after a meal, your muscles prevent that sugar from ever reaching the sticky stage. A 2025 longitudinal study in neurology found that individuals with higher midlife muscle mass had significantly lower levels of brain aging markers. Your muscles are essentially stealing the sugar that would otherwise be used to rust your heart and cook your brain. Maintaining your metabolic sink isn't just about avoiding a diabetes diagnosis, it's about protecting the very organs that make you, you. Here is the doctor's verdict. Build your sink. Type 2. Diabetes is often framed as a life sentence or a moral failing of willpower. But the science tells a different story. It tells a story of a sink that needs to be used. You have the power to change the fluid dynamics of your body. You don't need to be a professional athlete. You just need to be a custodian of your muscle tissue. Pick up something heavy at least twice a week. Take that 10-minute walk after meals. Protect the muscle you have, and build a little more whenever you can. You aren't just building a body, you are building a metabolic shield that will serve you for the rest of your life. I want to hear from you. What's your favorite way to use your sink after a meal? Let's start the conversation in the comments below. Stay strong, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next. Watch this video suggestion. It was especially picked for you. Please share, comment, like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Thank you. It helps a ton with the algorithm. Remain tuned for future videos and keep growing.